Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei got harem with Rias, Sona and Raynare? Part 1. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Issei Hyoudou, a student of a previous girls-only school Kuo Academy, infamous pervert along with his friends Motohama and Mitsuda, all-around moron, and an aspiring harem king. However, what people see in front of them are usually just the surface. Some people go as far as to create facades to make other people underestimate them, and Issei Hyoudou is one of them. Issei isn't a bumbling idiot with a perverted streak a mile wide, nor does he wish to be a harem king. He's mostly asocial, with no other friends than the two other perverts aforementioned. He doesn't really think that they're friends, more like people with the supest same hobbies, and that he's smart. Smart enough to know that there are more to the world than what meets the normal human eye, and smart enough to know that this Yuma Amano is lying to him. He knew that it wasn't his paranoia acting up, the facts were just aligning to it. First, she couldn't have possibly known about him since she's not from Kuo. Second, as much as it's painful to admit, none would like him enough to actually be his girlfriend. Third, she said that she saw him pass by multiple times, yet he remembers no hide nor hair of her every time he was walking down the bridge. His spatial awareness would warn him of someone staring at him. In fact, he could feel one watching him right now. And lastly, there was his gut feeling. Not much to base upon, but it has saved him multiple times before. And as they say, curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. But somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew that the satisfaction of knowing what was happening would only bring in more problems. So he accepted. Cause no matter how much you change Issei Hyoudou, the wielder of the great Welsh dragon and the boosted gear, his love for Apace can never be nullified. Magic, as the book said, is powered by imagination. And mana reserves. And control. And some small theory. And maths. And science. And a lot of other things. Physics, mostly. You can't make something out of nothing, as the conservation of energy dictates. And mana is a type of energy, albeit on the side of supernatural things. Things that normal, human science could explain. After all, no one can summon fire that rivals the heat of the sun out of glowing circles as human, right? Partially correct. Humans naturally have small mana reserves. However, some people that deign to actually meditate, as in meditate, not doze off in a weird stance, can feel a flicker of mana. People with larger reserves than normal are the most susceptible to the feeling, but they barely understand it. That is not the case for Issei Hyoudou. Being the epitome of a stereotypical introvert, he likes books. The doctor once said that books are the best weapons in the world and that a library is the best arsenal created. So he armed himself. And he came across a book called Magic for Dummies by someone called Azazel. At first, Issei read it for shits and giggles, thinking it was just another wizardry tale, but as he read further into the book, he tried the instructions because they seemed so real. And lo and behold, magic. At least the bare flicker of it. Oh well. It said in the book that mana is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So every night and before going to school, he meditated and used his magic, did mana control exercises, and by the time he entered Kuo, he could already use 5 basic spells. Fireball, lightning bolt, wind burst, earth wall, and water stream. Fireball is literally what it means. Holding both hands up, or in the case of full mastery, a finger, and imagining a ball of compressed flames, a magic circle will conjure in front of you, and it should shoot out a ball of fire that is small and compact, but has greater force and speed. Well, definitely not strong, it's mostly just used as a distraction. Lightning bolt is channeling mana to your fingertips and imagining lightning currents. A bolt will shoot out of whatever finger you chose at, may it be your middle finger to add insult to the injury. It's quick and painful, easy to make, and probably very versatile with enough control and mastery. Wind burst is a gust of wind. Put in a lot of mana, and it could blow away trees in point-blank range to 50 meters. Imagine a wind blowing and the magic will do itself. Earth wall is erecting a wall from beneath your feet. Protects you from most low-powered attacks, but enough mastery and control could protect you from more. Water stream is a stream of pressurized water bursting from hell itself. Low-powered and it could be a water gun. High-powered and it could probably be the laser cutter. With enough mastery, you can make it follow your enemies and make water dragons. Issei knew that 5 measly techniques could save him from whatever would happen on Sunday, so he decided to ditch school on Friday and train his ass to Saturday. He only hopes he won't die a horrible death. Or be impaled by a spear. He really doesn't like the feeling of something stabbing through him and sting. Issei Hyoudou likes to prepare for the worst. Pessimistic? Probably. He prefers the term realistic, really. And so he decided to ditch school today to prepare for his date. Physical training involved the usual regimen of sit-ups, push-ups, squats, running and weightlifting. All supported by mana, of course. hits two birds with one stone. Magical training involved physical support, control exercises such as the mana strings, more explanation later. See. Chakra strings, and spell casting. And somehow, the day bled quickly with him doing nothing but train. And eat. Once he ran out of stamina, he'll sit down and study the intricacies of mana, and when he was low on the magical substance, he'll train his body. Issei Hyoudou doesn't have parents. Well, he had. But his supposed dad abandoned him and his mom couldn't handle the stress of working and taking care of a child, so when he was 6, his mother committed suicide. It was sad. He cried for a full week that day. He felt terrible, wallowing in guilt, thinking that it was his fault. If he wasn't born, then maybe, just maybe, his father wouldn't have left his mom, then she wouldn't be a cold corpse 6 feet under. He shook off his thoughts and descended into a dreamless sleep. Saturday. He woke up groggily and ate breakfast, before falling into routine. Increased the number of repetitions, focused on speed, cause they can't kill you if they can't hit you, and some more mana experimentation. Mana strings reached 5 meters, enough to open his fridge door and grab some chocolate. It was there that someone knocked on his door making him jump. Wasn't there a bloody doorbell? He cautiously walked to the door, his paranoia acting up, and peeked into the peephole. Cut hair, red glasses, purple eyes, small stature, a neutral mask, and a higher than average mana capacity. Who was this again? The name was stuck in the tip of his mouth. Sona. No, Sona. The school council president. And she's with someone. Red hair, blue-green eyes, an amused smirk, and larger than normal mana capacity, and a voluptuous body. Damn. Those boobs could probably kill a man. Suffocation or nosebleed. Doesn't matter. Rias Gremory. What? Why? Did they somehow know that I can use mana? And judging by their reserves, they probably did. But there's something different. Like their mana is tainted. Sona knocked on the door again, so Issei Hyoudou decided to open the door. They aren't scared of wood anyways. Hi. Hello. What can I do for you? He stuttered. Is that even the proper greeting? He wasn't sure. Can't really blame him, 2 perverts as friends, some head injury from the beatings, and an asocial mindset can do that to a person. Hello there, Hyoudou-san. We noticed your absence yesterday and we wanted to check on you. President spoke. Okay. What? I couldn't possibly be the only person who was absent yesterday. And even so, it wouldn't warrant the attention of the 2 highest people in the social ladder. Suspicions bled in his thoughts, his eyes narrowing a fraction. Were they accomplices of that chick, Yuma? No. Yuma's mana was tainted, but there were signs of holiness. As you can see, I'm fine. Probably. Definitely fine. It was their turn to be suspicious. So far no perverted acts, his eyes weren't even looking at their chests yet, although his eyes usually looked at the floor, Sona Citri had her doubts. So she decided to send out a pulse of mana to see if there's an illusion. Issei's eyes widened, time slowed, Sona Kaichu tackled him, and he fell to the ground. Who are you? What have you done to Hyoudou? Came her question, an underlying threat and steel beneath her sharp glare. Her soft hands were strangling his neck, the other holding back his chest. His eyes widened in panic. What do you mean? He asked back. She adjusted her hips, finding a much comfortable position before reasserting control. By then, Issei was blushing up a storm, blood slowly peeking out of his nose. Sona-chan. Didn't know you had it in you. It was Rias this time, her tone teasing and almost sultry. Can't say I'm jealous. As quick as she tackled me, Sona stood, face flushed red, glare pointing at Rias. As much as it was amusing, Issei decided to talk about more pressing matters. After he took some air, maybe. Why the hell did you tackle me? He shouted indignantly. It's not every day someone tackles you in your own house, after all. The crimson-haired student sighed, before sitting on his couch. Man, don't they have manners? He thought to himself. Rias Pav, third person. You know. Rias felt a mixture of confused, amused, and slight jealousy. Confused because she's never seen Sona act like that and she tried to understand why, but sometimes her best friend's thoughts were beyond her. Amused because of the rather cute position Issei and the Ravenet was stuck in before Sona stood up. She took pictures, actually. Blackmail material is good every now and then. And jealousy. Devils are quite territorial in nature, so when she said Sona that Issei was hers, then Issei was hers. No objections. She sighed amusedly when he saw Issei stand up and mumble about people without manners and something about the bloody sun. And her amusement grew higher when she saw Sona sit beside her face flushed red, a small pout gracing her lips. Rias grinned at her and all she received was a huff. She giggled demurely. Her thoughts on Issei and Sona came to a halt when their reluctant host arrived with teacups and a pot of tea. He sat down and placed the tray on the table and spoke. So why did you just straddle me on the ground, Sana Kaicho? And Sona's blush darkening. I was suspicious of your actions. You haven't been staring at our chests when we were at your door and we were there for at least 5 minutes, she said. How she managed not to stutter was beyond Rias, seeing as her face was still like her hair. Am I really that perverted? Rias and Sona heard him mumble, his head hung in shame, dark clouds hanging over his head. When the ladies stayed silent however, his head hung deeper. Seeing that he wasn't going to get out of his glum, they helped themselves get tea. So why did you come here? He asked them. She sighed inwardly. Issei. I heard you got a date, she dodged the question. His eyes narrowed, picking up on her topic change. What are you talking about? He countered. Huh. News travels fast. She reasoned. But I haven't heard from Motohama nor Mitsuda. They will be outraged by this information. He's smarter than he looks, which could be dangerous. The situation was spiraling out of Ria's control, and she knew it. A subtle nudge to cool down Sona, and she took over the situation. It's my job to know what happens to students. And your girlfriend asked us. Oh, he mumbled under his breath, I'm fine, as you can see. Why were you absent yesterday? Rias asked. I was feeling a little bit under the weather, so I decided to ditch. The brown-haired student responded. Very well. I apologize for what I did earlier. Good luck on your date. With that, Sona stood up and nodded her head. He led them to the door and nodded at them. Feel free to visit again. I guess. See you on Monday. He only hoped that whatever happens on Sunset tomorrow, he gets to see them again. Back to training, he guessed. Issei was nervous. Aside from the fact that this is his first date and his first girlfriend, this could also probably his last. Shoving his hand inside his pants pocket, he idly fingered the small flyer given by the cosplayer with bat wings on the way to their meeting place. Then his thoughts went back to yesterday with his meeting with the SC president and the ORC president. He knew they were hiding something. It was weird, but he felt that he could trust them. He didn't believe what they said though. They couldn't have found out about this date unless if they had someone following him. Problem is, why? As far as he knew, he's been masking his magical presence properly. Did they know something that he didn't? Issei-kun. Ice-kun. A hand was waving in front of him, concerned black eyes peering at him. He decided that if everything he's suspicious about is just an effect of his paranoia, then he'll be laying off the late-night marathons. Nothing has happened yet. Everything's normal. Was all he did for nothing? Seriously? Yep. No more Netflix for him for the next 2 days. Probably. They went to many places. Clothing stores, an ice cream parlor, the arcade and the park. His mind was blaring alarms in his head whenever they're alone, his mind running different scenarios on what could happen, exit points, and possible weapons. Only when they were people did he allow him to relax slightly. And then they end up here. In the park. Sitting near the fountain. Secluded from prying eyes, although there was one that was prickling the periphery of his vision. A flash of black and it's gone. Probably his imagination. Years of surviving alone can be detrimental to one's health and sanity, he supposed. Weird. Issei-kun. I want to ask you something. You know. To celebrate our first date, Yuma started. His heart started pounding loudly, worry and fear creeping in his chest. His mind started expecting the worst scenarios and played them in his mind until he heard her speak. Ice-kun, may I live with you? What? Could you repeat that? He asked confusedly. Was he hearing wrong? She blushed in embarrassment. Well. You see. I got, sort of, kicked out of my apartment. His mind was too confused to pick up the half-lie she said. Issei's brain tried to work overtime before it short-circuited, added with her pleading eyes, he gave an accidental answer. Yeah. Sure, he mumbled. She beamed at him, smile sparkling, eyes closed. Thanks, Ice-kun. Silently, she swore at her leader that she would kick him in the nuts. Plot twist, any one-line break here. Raynare, Yuma. She hated her leader with a burning passion. She wanted to kick his balls and shove it in his throat and then kick his ass 6 ways to Sunday. How dare he kick her out of her apartment, saying that it was for the sake of her sanity. She's sure that she'll go insane dating a pervert, but living with a bloody, drooling, blabbering pervert, hell no. She'd rather be stuck with Donaseek than be stuck with this degenerate. However, the date she had with him was rather fun. He never made perverted jokes, his eyes trailed downwards only once when she pressed her chest to his arm, his smiles were bright, his brown eyes sparkled amusedly at her antics, and as much as it pains her to admit, maybe her first impression was wrong. But that doesn't mean that she likes the brown-haired teen. Even if she did, there's no way that it's going to work. She's by all means immortal, and he was human. Nope. She wasn't liking him. Never. Rias Gremory. She felt nervous. The summoning circle on Issei's flyer wasn't calling for her. What happened? Did the fallen angel manage to take him? No. No. Bad thoughts. Think positive, she told herself. Akeno was there. She'll call her if there's anything wrong and would have helped Issei first. The door of the old school building opened and speak of the devil and she shall appear. Akeno Himejima. Rias queen. One of the great one-isamas of Kuo Academy. She seemed disappointed for a reason, but Rias decided to ask about the brown-eyed protagonist. What happened to Issei? But you. Getting attached, are we? Her queen smiled teasingly. Other than a small dusting of her cheeks, there was no outside reaction. Akeno pouted. Well. Issei's still alive. Although our plan has some complications. Explain. The fallen didn't kill him. However, she asked to live with him. What? Flabbergasted, Rias clicked her mouth shut, then mulled about the situation. Was the fallen trying to recruit Issei? After all, Issei has a draconic-type sacred gear. It could be possible that they sensed that. But if that was the case, then they wouldn't bother with disguises. Nor would they want to live with their target. There's something wrong going on here, but she couldn't help but ignore them for now. She needed Issei. He's her last hope of getting away from that accursed marriage. She needed to act fast. She sighed and rubbed her temples to ease her growing headache. Issei, you're so troublesome, she thought. She hopes that everything works out in her favor and that she could get Issei before anyone else does. Slowly, Issei's mind finally caught up to what was happening. And by then, it was too late. Somewhere along the way, they managed to pick up her luggage and walk to his home. Iuma was still smiling, and he couldn't hello but accept the facts. He sighed inwardly. Nighttime has fallen and they've just arrived Issei's home. Good thing I kept the house clean, he thought. The house was a normal 2-story terrace house with a light blue exterior, a balcony on the second floor, and a brown roof. The first floor had the living room and the kitchen. The floors were carpeted with gray, there was a red pit couch with a gray blanket folded neatly beside the pillows. The walls were painted black, the kitchen was clean, and the sink was empty of dirty dishes. Raynare was surprised. From what she's experienced and what she had expected was different. Most men she worked with were dirty and messy, so she expected Issei, a perverted hormonal teenager, to be messier than most. Seems like there's more to Issei than what meets the eye. So. Welcome to my house, he grinned sheepishly, his hand spread in a welcoming fashion. Over there's the kitchen. I'm pretty sure I stocked up on food there. Living room there. You can use the TV whenever you like, the brown-haired male toured her around the house. Raynare took note of his actions. The way he was speaking doesn't add up to how he was acting earlier. During their date, she was usually the one to strike up conversation. Maybe he felt safe here. No. When she observed, stalked him at school, he seemed to be the amoronic pervert. Along with his friends Moto something and Matsu what's his name, they formed the so-called perverted trio. He was loud. Had an addiction to tits. Weak. Frail. Stupid. Gullible. A child with a future so bleak that he wouldn't probably survive high school. Without knowing it, they reached the second floor. Here's your room. Bed. Closet. Whatever. Bathroom's down the corridor if you need it, then he paused, as if thinking, oh. And no matter what happens, never go in my room. Clear? She just nodded at the brown-eyed student. Alrighty then. Holler if you need me. I'm making dinner. He stared at her for a few seconds then left. Raynare sighed to herself and decided to place her clothes in the closet. The room wasn't too shabby. A double-decker bed, with the bottom being a workplace than a bed, the walls were painted cyan, the floor was carpeted with the same gray found everywhere, a double-doored closet, and a window. As she placed her belongings in their proper places, she wondered what was in Issei's room. Maybe she could take a peek when he's gone. She sighed again. Life for her wouldn't be the same ever again. Issei started to cook downstairs, his mind however was somewhere else. He knew that Yuma was going to look into his room sometime, so that was problem number 1. Maybe he should start moving the items he collected to the basement. He should, he thought. Though for now, deadlocking the door with his screwdriver should do. While she could always bring the door down, it would be too obvious. Problem 2. Finances. While he was sure he was rich, he knew he could survive for at least until he graduates college and find a job before he ran out of money. Supporting himself and his girlfriend, however, he still has to calculate. He knew the funds his mother managed to save before dying wouldn't suffice. Problem 3. Training. While today didn't go as planned, it didn't mean nothing else would happen. He can't stay up for entire nights anymore for training since there's someone living with him. He'll have to cut his training time, Issei sighed. He left the chicken to cook in the pot and went to his room. Issei pulled a cylindrical object from his pocket and pointed the green emitter at the doorknob, and as the screwdriver extended, a soft yet shrill sound came and soon the knob clicked and opened. The room was messy. Papers strewn everywhere, books scattered, some piling precariously on the grey carpet. Grey walls pinned with blueprints, papers, some strings and thumbtacks. He picked up a stray book and read over the cover. Ars Gotia. Huh. He's never read this book. His interest piqued, he decided to study it later. He placed it on the surprisingly clean bed and changed his clothes into something more comfortable. With that, he left the room and locked it again with his screwdriver and went down to finish cooking, his thoughts going back to Yuma. She wasn't human. No normal human had that much reserves. Her name probably wasn't real either. And she's probably under a disguise. Disguises were pretty easy to cast and drain little on the reserves to maintain, and by the way her reserves are dipping, it's probably a strong one. Speaking of liars, there was also Rias and Sona. By the way they spoke of his date, he could detect some wariness and something akin to hate in their voices. Small amounts, really. But it was there. He sighed. Women are so troublesome, he mumbled. The soup he made was done, rice was cooked, scrambled eggs and corned beef. Since he didn't know much to cook, the table was made and all he needed was to call his girlfriend. He called for her and she came downstairs dressed in an almost see-through nightgown. Her breasts were clearly shown, her nipples poking the fabric of it, her lower mound clean and shaved. All of this Issei's mind took in quick succession, a trickle of blood stemming from his nose. His jaw was slacked. The Yuma Amano that was innocent in his eyes, not really, was giving him a free show. No hot-blooded male would not react to that. He fixed himself quickly and gestured at the table, not trusting his voice. She giggled sultrily at him, hands covering her mouth. Inside though, she was disappointed and confused. Issei should be transfixed to her boobs and flying with a nosebleed by now. But no. His reaction was just a jaw drop and some blood. Sji growled in her mind, she would get a reaction stronger than that out of him soon. That she swore on her honor as a fallen angel. In the back of her mind, she knew that something wasn't adding up, but she was so hung up on his reaction than the facts, so she dismissed it. Throughout dinner, Issei's focus was on food and some stray thoughts, distracting himself from Yuma's chest. Screwdriver modifications, books, spells, monotheories, and school were some of them. School. Oh crap. He forgot about that thing due to the tension of the happenings in his life. Idly, he wondered how someone could forget about something important. Speaking of which. Say, Yuma, did you look for me at school last Friday? He observed Yuma's reaction, her eyes showed confusion, a small frown tugging her lips. No, though I did wonder where you were. Truth. You do have school tomorrow, right? Yeah. Now that I think about it, I have an assignment for tomorrow. With that she fixed her plate and stood up. Lie. Don't worry Issei. I'll cook tomorrow. She said, running upstairs. Sunday slowly ended, Issei cleansed the dishes and locked the house. He headed for his room and shut it locked. Brown eyes fell to the book on his bed and decided to read it. Noticing something stuck between a pair of pages, he opened on that page and saw a black feather. Issei pulled it out and read the title. Gremory. What? Gremory. Like Ria's Gremory. There was another feather in another page. Citri. Like Shatori. Not really a good cover name, his flabbergasted mind thought. But what are they? He flipped to the very first page and saw. Demons. Morning bled through the windows, bathing Issei in sunlight. His brown hair was frazzled, black framed glasses askew, brown eyes drooping tiredly. What he found out last night was both scary and exhilarating. Now he was sure. Those mana signatures of theirs was a direct evidence, their last names, and their hate for fallen angels. Fallen angels weren't mentioned in the book, but at the very end, there was a note that led to another book about fallen angels. They were led by Azazel, a cadre class with 12 pairs of wings, ailing with 2 others. Before he could read further though, his body protested and forced him to sleep head first on the desk. The name Azazel sounded familiar. Something was screaming at him to know more, to satiate the burning curiosity in his mind. He had 2 choices. Confront the demons or devils or whatever they call themselves, or act like the clueless imbecile he always was, or ditch school altogether and wait for them to visit him. If they visited him once with a reason beyond to him, then they will visit him now because they need something from him, and not seeing him definitely will ring alarms in them. So here he was. After assembling the pit couch, he lied down and watched his favorite show Doctor Who. It was this show that sparked his want to know about the universe and the world. And most of all, this is where he got the idea of the sonic screwdriver. Raynare was out today, stating that she had school. But he didn't believe that one bit. He searched her supposed school's record before the marathon and found none about Yuma Amano. He managed to finish a season and a half before the doorbell rang. Showtime. He stared into the peephole of his wooden door and recoiled in surprise. There was an eye glaring at him through the peephole. He then peeped back again, seeing Sona with a scowl, eyes set in a fierce glare. Then there was Rias, who had a teasing smirk pointed at the short-haired girl. There was also another girl with them. Black ponytail, a shrine maiden's Hyoudou, and the picture-perfect Yamato Nadeshiko. However, there was a feeling of dread that tingles up his spine when she smiled at Sona. Probably nothing. They had the same feel of mana. Tainted. But there were some differences. Sona's felt soothing, like water. Rias felt like cold and morbid, like destruction. Akeno's was unpredictable, like lightning. Nature preferences. He thought as he opened the door and grinned at them. Nah, Sona-chan, you wouldn't straddle me this time, right? Issei teased. It was all to calm his nerves. What he's about to do is usually against how he usually operates. Stay low and silent is going out the window. He felt like he's joining a war he barely knew about and prepared for. The only hope that he was doing the right thing. Oh my, Sona-chan. Akeno teased suggestively. She growled slightly at them before placing a neutral mask. May we come in? Sona asked, still slightly flustered. Oh, sorry. Of course. Do come in, he gestured inside, stepping aside slightly. When they all came in, he shut the door and deadlocked the door shut. He kept the sonic screwdriver down his pocket and fixed himself. While they probably had teleportation spells, he placed runes around the place to nullify the use of magic outwardly. It can't stop overwhelming use of mana, but it should be able to stall for time. And should they notice the effects, they'll immediately assume it was made by Yuma, who he found out was a fallen angel. He headed for the kitchen to prepare tea, but was surprised to see Akeno already preparing some. What was he supposed to say in situations like this? I see you've handled the tea, he mumbled absent-mindedly. Oh yes. But you told me to prepare refreshments. I hope you don't mind, she smiled innocently. A little bit too innocent. It gave more shivers down his spine and decided to answer. Ah. No. Of course not. Thank you. Oh well. Whatever. When Sona Citri entered the brown-haired perv, she immediately detected her mana sealed shut. She narrowed her eyes. Was this what the fallen angel did? Well, she could probably overpower it and then break the runes itself. But that could trigger an alarm, and the fallen might come at them with reinforcements. Add Issei, an unknown variable, and they could get a messy situation. She noticed Rias tighten her fist and assumed the Grimoire heiress has come at the same conclusion she had. Rias sent Akeno to prepare some tea in Issei's kitchen. They noticed Issei enter the kitchen and promptly leave, his pace quite fast. He slowed down when he reached the couch and sighed in relief, his shoulders visibly sagging. She's a sadist, isn't she? He asked quietly. Yes, came the amused response of Rias. Sona decided to cut in before it goes to pointless speaking. Issei. You've been absent twice now. It's not my first time having consecutive absences, he stated in a matter-of-fact tone. It isn't, yes. However, we are concerned that maybe your relationship with someone is being a detriment to your studies and I did not need any detriments to fail in school, Issei cut her off. But that doesn't matter. What did you really come here for? Sona was a little peeved at being interrupted, but he did bring up a couple of good points. The tension was thick until Akeno came and served tea. Thank you, the Citri heiress said quietly. Then the silence stretched for a couple of minutes before he stood up. No one? Then I suppose it's my turn. He pulled a book from under one of the pillows and placed it on the small table. Sona peered at her glasses and looked at the title. Ars Gotia. Her eyes widened. Assuming by your reaction, you know about this. He grinned at her. You could say that, she admitted, but what does this have to do with us? Silently, she hoped that Issei hasn't read about the Grimoire. He flipped the book open and pointed at it. Grimoire? Can't be a coincidence, right Rias? Issei wondered as he spun to face the red-haired woman, pointing something at her and bopping her nose. She swatted his hand away and answered. It's my family name. What about it? Rias asked, just because you saw one in a book based on myths doesn't mean it's true. Normally, I would believe that, he started, his hand slipping the green-tipped object back in his pocket, however, I am not ignorant to the workings of mana. And yours. Tainted. Tainted like what the book describes it. Okay. What? He then spun again to meet her still wide eyes, his hand still in his pocket. And you. At least you made an effort to hide your true identity, he pulled out his screwdriver and bopped her nose twice. But it isn't enough. If someone just rolls your name right, then Shitori becomes Citri. He pointed the sonic probe at the book and flipped the pages to show the Citri crest. So? Explain. This was his plan. Tell them everything he managed to pick up and hope that they tell the truth. It was directly against his beliefs. It was dangerous. The want to know everything is going to be the death of him someday. It just felt wonderful. The mystery of these devils gets deeper every time he uncovers something. Like an answer giving more questions. He grinned at Sona's slack-jawed face. It looked cute on her. He closed it with 2 fingers, pushing her chin upwards. She closed it with a click, her cheeks red in embarrassment. The kendo giggled slightly, although she also can't believe that this pervert was capable of thinking. Rias had a lost look in her eyes, her cheeks also flushed pink. She never thought that a human would actually know about the Ars Gotia, let alone read it. So she did the best thing she could do. It was checkmate anyways. So? You're correct. We are devils. Rias confirmed. What do you want to know? Issei had a lot of realizations after the devil trio explained the history of the world to him. At least it wasn't boring. For him, it was terrifying. Humans are not alone. The supernatural is real. There were beings out there that are beyond human comprehension, yet are capable of melding into normal human society. It was terrifying. It was a proper wake-up call to get his shit straight and act right, because he probably just gained the attention of the higher-ups. Uma was probably spy. Which means she either directly reports to her superiors or she sends the intel through a safe channel, which still ends up to her leader. Sona, her real name, is the Citriaris and sister to Seraphol Leviathan, one of the 4 mass. And then Rias. Gremory heiress and sister to Serzich's Lucifer, literally the strongest being in hell. His only consolation was the fact that they should be stuck behind their desks doing paperwork. After the devils left, he managed to scramble his feet to the local park. His mind was still wandering around what he just learned, and it was surprising his feeble human mind can still function. Information overload is probably a thing. And then there was Ria's offer. Be a part of her magical, wonderful, and definitely slavery-free peerage, and be a devil. Apparently, depending on the type of piece shoved in his chest, it will give bonuses. Like say, a pawn can be promoted in enemy territory. Bishops are the spellcasters, the piece gives more mana but are weak to physical attacks. Rooks were the tanks. Heavy hitters and can take punishment from almost anything. Mana reserves are low and are usually very slow. Knights were the assault. Quick and precise. Usually sword users, they can hit and run enemies. They have low resistance and average mana. Queens are the jack of all trades. They have the goodies of all the pieces, except for pawn, and are generally spellcasters. All the weaknesses of the pieces are nullified, and the only detriment to progress is the person themselves. Frankly, he was very interested in being a devil. More mana, more fun, wings, and protection. He's going to be under Rias Gremory's peerage, which should make people think twice about attacking him. His humanity wasn't really worth much. He wasn't religious, and as far as he was concerned, being a devil is just a power-up. Issei was shaken from his thoughts when he saw a nun stumble. He rushed to help her stand up, and as she accepted his hand, he immediately felt the mana coursing through her along with something else. It was like that spot in his network, although hers was much more concentrated on her hands. The nun spoke in a different language. Italian. Oh. There we go, he thought. Thanks for helping me, sir, the nun said. No problem. Happy to help. He grinned when he saw the relief flash through her eyes. She probably didn't know much Japanese. A nun in devil-controlled area can be perceived as threat. Add with fallen angel presence, could cause a 3-way war. Another divine war. Should anyone start something against one side, then the other will definitely strike back. Where are you headed? He continued to ask. A church. I was supposed to be with someone but I got lost. A church. He scanned the maps he memorized and noted the fact that the only church in Kuo was abandoned years ago. Exiled. Taken in by the fallen, probably. Suspicious hands. Sacred gear. Probably. Who are you supposed to be with? He smiled at her, taking his hand back. Irina-sama told me to follow her, but I got lost with the people. His eyes widened. Irina. No. It can't be. I suppose I could show you towards the church. No. Probably a coincidence. Should be a coincidence. What's your name? I'm the Issei Hyoudou. Beige Argento, Issei-san. After all these years, she comes back. For what? We hope that whatever she's doing here, he doesn't get involved. Irina Shidu was having a bad day. First, she was said to escort an exile. An exile? Why escort an exile? They were heretics. Witches. Like that holy maiden. She scoffed, more like unholy. Second, she was ordered to stay in devil-controlled area. Devils. Those filthy monsters have no right to exist. They probably hypnotized everyone here by now. Her eyes widened. Memories flushed back in her head. Issei. Oh no. She swore that if those devils touched her love best friend, she will murder them all. But first, deliver the heretic, speak to the devils, then visit her old childhood friend Issei. She looked behind her to make sure that the exile was still there. None. No one there. Wonderful, she muttered dryly. She only hoped that this thing ends quickly so she can speak to her friend. Raynare was annoyed as well. Azazel, her leader, was sitting on her, his now once pristine couch seemingly unrepentant. "So? I've been here for hours now, and you've been ignoring me," she growled. "Why do I have to live with him?" Azazel merely smirked and popped a potato chip in his mouth. Any moment now. Her eyes grew livid, her head filled with rage as she flew at him and tried to strangle his neck. He laughed at her and decided to stop fooling the Ravenet and spoke. "Whoa, calm down, Raynare." She did, but the anger was present in her eyes. "He's interesting, to say the least," the cadre class started. "There's more to him than what he shows." Definitely more. There was something else within him. Something dark. He couldn't pinpoint it yet since it was small. Almost not there. But it was there. Like a dark blotch in him. It was present in his mana as well, since it is part spiritual and physical energies. "I want you to keep him safe, but never interfere with his choices. If he wants to be a devil, then accept it." Well, he did hope the child didn't do that. Azazel did see the pros of the choice. "Excuse me? Why don't we just recruit him then?" "Fair point. I don't want to be involved with him." It was a flimsy excuse. Raynare wasn't even convinced. That paperwork definitely rusted his skills. Issei was interesting to him. He was very much like Azazel was when he was younger. The want to know everything, his addiction to sci-fi shows, his good acting skills, and of course the handsome look of his. After all, it's like what they said. Like father, like son. Amik. The Harem King. Issei, Motohama, Mitsuda were all eating lunch in the roof. The duo were speaking animatedly about porn and women, while Issei stayed silent, his thoughts straying to the project he was working on. He just got hooked to the series of Doctor Who and was literally smitten to the all-purpose tool the British had. He was just starting the research on the sonic screwdriver that he didn't hear them asking him about his dreams. Hey, Issei. Harem King is out today." One of them, he wasn't sure who, spoke. "Harem King? What was that? Harem? So you want to be a Harem King? I didn't know you had it in you." They both cheered, not noticing the sinfast look in his face. The bell rang, the perverts left him, and soon, his confusion cleared and his mood immediately fell. Now he's a bloody aspiring Harem King. Wonderful. With that, he left the roof and attended his classes. Issei and Asia headed towards the church, making small talk until both of their stomachs groaned. The blonde nun blushed in embarrassment, hands holding her stomach. Issei grinned sheepishly at her. "I suppose a little detour is required." He led her to the nearest fast food and ordered 2 cheeseburgers. When it was served, he noticed the girl stare at it weirdly. "You haven't eaten a burger before?" he asked, eyebrow raised. She shook her head. "No, the church only fed us with soup and sometimes pasta." And so he taught her how to eat served food, earning a couple of blushes and laughs from both of them. It was weird. He's practically had no family. Although her mother had died when he was 6, she never had time for him even before that. Her work was more important for her, and while he understood that it was for him anyways, it didn't mean he liked it. Maturity came soon. He noticed the tiny details, the small actions, the expressions of her face as she slowly fell into depression. Then she died. After that, his only friend left him to serve the church, and ever since then, he was afraid to call people his friends. It was an irrational fear. There was no logical reason for it. He was bitter at the simultaneous losses he gained when he was a child. He then fell into depression as well. The world seemed so bleak, he literally had no reason to live. Books became his retreat, and soon he was sucked into fantasies. He snapped out of his musings when they managed to see the church. "Well. Here we are. Are you supposed to meet someone here?" "I'm not sure." Mana's signature behind. He spun around and pulled his screwdriver. "Who's there? Show yourself." "If I don't, what would you do?" A deep voice resounded, sounding annoyed yet amused. The figure appeared from the trees. He was a tall man wearing a trench coat and a fedora, like those from the detective films. "Are you Asia Argento?" The man questioned her, ignoring Issei's sonic pointed at him. "Yes." She squeaked. "I am Donasik, is this your escort?" "I expected more." "Boy. Are you saying I'm weak?" Issei shouted. He took a step forward aggressively. "Basically. Leave or I'll kill you." The fedora-wearing man threatened, leaking some killing intent. That seemed to scare the filthy human before him as the brown-haired coward stepped back. False bravado. Weakling. The fallen angel reached for Asia but was stopped when Issei held his arm. Donasik felt anger. How dare this filth touch him? He growled and threw the brown-haired teen away from him, crashing him into a tree. He took the girl and headed inside the abandoned church, not noticing the smirk on his victim's face. Irina glared at the building in front of her. It seemed decrepit, fitting for a lowly devil, she thought as she pushed the doors open. She took note of the surroundings. It seemed to be more sophisticated inside. Couches, a table, a shower in the corner, a red-haired woman glaring at her, and… She stopped her sweep of the room as she noticed the intent and the grimoire shooting daggers at her. So, what is an agent of the church doing here? The redhead asked. Ambassador duties. The blonde countered. It was no use being hostile. It was her job to keep the tensions low, and insulting a devil will definitely cause something. Oh? I haven't received the memo. Irina frowned. The church should have sent the memo by now. As she tried to comprehend the situation, Rias observed the woman from the church. Skin-tight black bodysuit, twin pigtails, black leggings, black arm sleeves. Irina Hyoudou. Holy sword user, Rias frowned, loyal to the church, bordering zealousness, the irrational hate to anyone against her beliefs. The file given by the church had other basic information. Along with these were some of her connections in Kuo. And it all goes back to Issei Hyoudou. Rias was genuinely surprised by the boy's questioning. Although his guess of them being demons isn't technically wrong, it was him being somewhat knowledgeable on mana that took the cake. While he couldn't probably sense and specify sacred gears, he probably is a sensor. The brunette also knew how to suppress his mana, making him look average. And all of these just made her want him more. I was just kidding. The church has sent us a missive regarding your arrival. She reassured the alarmed blonde. Irina's shoulders sagged in relief. If that's all, may I leave? Of course. With that, she turned on her heels and wore her robes back. She had a brunette to track. Issei ran back home, slightly limping. That bloody angel did a number on him. Most of his bones ached, his head was still dizzy. But none of them dampened his mood. He managed to plant a tracker on the aspiring detective. It would record everything happening in that abandoned church, as long as that donut sack doesn't leave it. Or he could control the spy bug to latch on something else, assuming he gets home before the one who shall not be named finds High. Shit. That's her, isn't it? She hasn't spotted him yet, so he ducked into cover. He could hear her rapping on his door, annoyed by the sound of it. Issei extended his senses, hoping that Yuma wasn't home. Fucking hell. Everything's against him today. Yuma was just down the road, carrying groceries. He fished his pocket for his phone until he remembered that he left it inside the house. Fantastic. He sneaked around the garbage can, planning to intercept Yuma and lead her away from the residence. That was the plan until he heard the soft tapping of foot beside him. He looked up, he smiled brightly, and abruptly stood up. Hello. He said as cheerfully as he could, his cheeks straining, eyes meeting the angry ones of his old friend. So what were you doing there, Issei? Issei? Oh no. I am not him. I was merely looking for my, keys. Yes. Keys. She didn't look amused nor convinced. Boy. Ice-kun. Open the door. And there goes Yuma. If possible, Irina's glare seemed to darken much more, her gaze wanting to dissect him. Ah, crap. There goes his mood. Irina was beyond annoyed. Issei led her and another woman into his house and told them both to sit on the couch. He then promptly left and headed upstairs, still feeling her disapproving glare leaving his back. And then she stared at the lady nervously smiling at her. She decides to interrogate her first, before questioning her main target of ire and affection. So, what are you to say? Irina asked with an edge in her voice. He's my boyfriend. I'm Yuma Mono. The fallen stuttered. Irina Hyoudou. Childhood friend of Ice-kun. The blonde stated. Well, I see you've both associated yourselves with each other. Issei clapped, his clothes changed. Now, why have you returned, Hyoudou-san? Irina ignored the way he called her, somewhat more focused on his appearance. His height was average, lanky generic brown hair styled chicken ass, cliché hazel eyes, and an overall grade of 5 of 10. You wouldn't probably notice him in a crowd, especially with the way he walks. He was like a ghost. She was just lucky she noticed him sneaking around the bins earlier, her honed instincts warning her of a presence. Why am I not allowed to visit an old friend of mine's? You lost that privilege when you abandoned me. Excuse me? Abandon you? Did the church send you? He deflected. What church? The church you're so fanatic about. Pardon? Their banter continued on, asking each other questions, someone deflecting, redirecting, outright lying, and at the end of it, Yuma got bored and decided to cook. It was obvious that Issei was winning their war of words, his jabs at her religion, making her angrier and angrier, until she snapped and decided to go physical. Issei dodged her and ran upstairs, shutting the door with a deadlock. She banged her fist on the door, the other hand shaking the unmoving knob. Issei. Come out here and fight me like a man. I don't hit girls and children. He shot back. Who are you calling a child? Raynare sighed, they were much more like a couple than her and Issei. Granted, it's been only a couple of days since their date, it doesn't mean she can't be jealous. Annoyance flaring at the screamfest the two were having, she decided to knock the woman out before the blonde destroys the door. Issei collected his thoughts, hands mindlessly drawing magical circles with varying functions. He thought about Ria's offer. Then read more reference books. Apparently, devils were much weaker during daytime, has the weakness against light and holy weapons. I would like to thank whoever pointed this out. The glorified slavery, the multiple cases of headaches whenever the term God was mentioned, and some more cons. The pros were much more underwhelming. So he decided to decline the offer as politely as possible. Asia seemed to be doing fine. Although the environment she's in is terrible for a growing child like her, it wouldn't be long until that freed Selzen acted irrationally and attacked someone. A devil client, most likely. His repertoire of books grew larger, the more he seemed to get involved with the supernatural. All this given by his mysterious benefactor. The black feathers were a pretty obvious lead. A fallen angel has taken interest in him. Coincidentally, the books appeared after his mother's death. And no matter how many times he tried to capture his benefactor, no matter how many times he sealed the windows and doors, nor how many times he drew nullifying runes in his room and the entire bloody house, he still can't catch even a glimpse of it. Then he decided to brush up on his history. A book he found out listing multiple instances of mages defeating demons and of sorcerers descending hail upon their enemies. It opened an option for him. An all-around mage. Jack of all trades sort of thing. He sighed and decided to sleep, leaving the formulas to much more efficient spells on the desk. Forget what I said about him incapable of stronger magic. Unbidden to him, a book appeared on the floor as he descended into the abyss. And within the dark recesses of his mind, a dragon spoke, soon. Tuesday. He decided that maybe ditching school was a bad idea, lest he get scolded by Sona again. He arrived to school. Think of the devil and she shall appear. Sona was there in front of the gates, arms crossed under her chest. There was the usual stoic mask and impassive stare she gave. She looked like the strict teacher, the one who followed the rules stiffly. Rules were boring. Boringers. Blue boringers. Kudos to anyone who gets it. He waved at her, good morning, Sona Kaichu. She unfolded her arms and walked towards him. I expected you to be absent again, Hyoudou. I live to break expectations, Sona-chan. Do not call me with such familiarity, though she could see the truth in his words. Sona might go ook sometimes. She expected him to die at the hands of the fallen angel. Yet he didn't. She expected him to never know about them until told. Yet he did. She expected him to accept Rias, the cunning girl that she is, offer of power and his personal harem. Yet he didn't. He was unpredictable, which brought her to her decision of having a chess match with him. Moo. But remember when you first visited M, she punched him in the stomach, interrupting him as he wheezed. Damn, you hit hard. He coughed. She glared at him through her glasses. Fine. Nothing happened that day, I get it. I need you at the library during lunch. He raised an eyebrow. What for? I want to see your skills in chess. Oh ho. Chess. Then prepare to be beaten by the great Issei Hyoudou. He decided that he'll definitely break Sona's mask of stoicism, even if he looks like that brat Naruto from that anime. She smirked. Say that when I trample you to the ground, oh great Issei Hyoudou. But that she left, heading towards the school's student council. Oh well. It's been so long since he last played chess. Well. Not too long. He was still young after all. He beat that stupid old bastard with a goatee in chess in a streak. 40 wins. Out of 180 matches. And then the jerk with the weird hair disappeared all of a sudden. Oh well. He had a strange feeling about him winning. Like he was signing a contract that he shouldn't have. Line brackets. Motohama and Mitsuda pestered him immediately when he entered class, asking him why he was absent. Of course, the answer will always be the term sick. Then they started talking about hentai, arages, and porn in the most shameless way possible. The two of them didn't even care when the females of the room were glaring daggers at them, and if glares could kill, the three of them would be in the underworld. Classes started, Issei's mind was focused on chess strategies until lunch came, the bell rang, and everyone rushed out of the room. Hey Issei. We're gonna peek on the kendo club. Wanna come? Motohama invited him. Issei shook his head. I'll pass. See you two later. In the infirmary, probably. So I guess they were technically his friends. He wasn't sure. They don't hang out much. The last time was a month ago, and even then he was ditched. So he guessed not. He ate his food on the way to the library, thanking THR fact that it was just those box takeouts, since him nor UCHSN was capable of cooking decent meals. He should start reading cookbooks. It might save him the money. He threw away the box as he entered Kuo's library. It was quite large. The walls were painted white, narrow aisles between shelves, and in the center of it all, tables. He greeted the librarian, then headed for the tables. And there she was in all her strict glory. Arms crossed, impassive gaze, it was definitely her. And who the hell were those people? And why the hell was Rias there? Moo. An audience. He grumbled. I hope you don't mind the party, she said. Oh no. They're already here. Might as well let them. Then sit. We only have until dismissal for this. 3 subjects. For me? Yes. I don't want to be interrupted. My. Didn't know you liked me that much. Sit down and play, she said sternly. And try not to disappoint me. Dear, I won't be disappointing you. But that, he moved first. Welp. It was already time to go home, but here he was, a couple more moves to victory. And according to her face, she knew that. That expression of horror, surprise, and defeat. It felt good. Somehow. So surrender or die. He smirked. She scanned the board once more, trying to find a possible way to at least stop him. It was rather easy once who found out her weakness. She hated sacrificing pieces. And he maneuvered around it, saw the chances and took it. His moves were unpredictable, his eyes never leaving the board. To say that Sona was surprised was an understatement. Once more, he broke expectations. She expected him to be a challenge, but not actually beat her. And it was close. She almost won. He had 4 pieces left on the board, well she had more, but he managed to corner her king. So she did the only move she could. I forfeit. She looked around the room, meeting eye to eye with Rias. The redhead was smirking at her, like she knew something the bespectacled girl didn't. It was just a chess match. There was nothing. Oh. Anyone who manages to beat her in chess is the one she's going to marry. She looked at her peerage, noting their expressions. Most of them were smiling, but Saji, her only pawn, seemed angry. She wasn't ignorant of his feelings for her. He had challenged her to chess almost every day, but her pawn always lost. I suppose that's it. See you tomorrow. Issei stood up to leave, carrying his backpack on one shoulder. Wait. Saji growled. Fight me. Now. Huh? At chess. Sorry mate, I got stuff to do. Issei ignored the anger in the brat's tone. No, Saji continued to growl, his sacred gear activating. Oh. You mean that kind of fight. He pointed a finger at Saji, a magic circle appearing before it shot a bolt of light against Saji, knocking the devil down. Well. You're centuries too early to try and fight me, brat. Not really. He just got started on studying light energy, seeing that it was effective against devils, so he used it against the angry student. Sona's bishops rushed to help Saji. Rias however followed Issei outside. So Issei, about my offer. He spun to look at her. I'm sorry, but I must decline, his tone was apologetic and sincere. Ria's heart was crushed. There was no hope of her winning against Riser now. Her plans of fighting the Phoenix in a raiding game has no chance now. Tell me this, why are you so adamant on having me on your peerage? She sighed, I'll tell you sometime, just not now. Oh well. How about this? I help you with your problem and you help me with mine. I doubt you could help me. Although if you join me. There are always other ways to beat an adversity. Believe me, I would know. You sound like you've had experience. Maybe. Maybe not. 6 years was a long time for a child after all. Fine then. I'll explain tomorrow. Meet me in the old school building. Sure. See you later. With that, the brown-haired mage left the school altogether. He had another project to do. And monitor Asia. Those fallen were really creepy. The guy with a detective fetish, a woman that looks like a child, a lady with a business outfit at least 20 sizes too small, and that foul-mouthed stray exorcist. And then there were the normal exorcists. How they managed to sneak within devil territory is beyond him. Weren't there like devil patrols or something? Oh well. He might as well buy food for him and his girlfriend. He hoped that Asia stays safe and that he could help Rias in any way that he can. And maybe he could take Yuma on another date. Irina should be fine wherever she is. Unbeknownst to him, the gears of fate are working to fuck him over, for better or for worse. Issei wasted the afternoon reading and training his magic. He decided to order food through delivery so he wouldn't have to go anywhere other than his front door. Yuma seemed to have the same idea as she was sprawled in the pit couch, watching a cheesy romance movie while he studied on the dining table. Or maybe he should call her Raynare now. Flashback. First flashback. He arrived home after his and Ria's confrontation. After opening the door, he headed upstairs only to see Yuma trying to rip his room's door open. Boy. What are you doing there? My key slipped under the door. She smiled neviously at him. He simply raised an eyebrow in response. There wasn't a space under his door, he made sure it was sealed shut so nothing can slip past it. Okay. Fine. I was curious. The Ravenet sighed. Well. How about this? I show you my room and you tell me what and who you really are. He bargained. She seemed to completely freeze. What do you mean? The brunette narrowed his eyes. Do you think I wouldn't know, Yuma-chan? Know what? She seemed to gather enough of her mental faculties to lie through her teeth. That Amano Yuma doesn't exist in any database. Oh. She didn't bother to actually strengthen her guise, thinking that Issei wouldn't look for more information about her. She shouldn't have underestimated the brown-haired anomaly. She narrowed her eyes as well. Why? The Issei she observed wouldn't bother to look a gift horse in the mouth. He was supposed to be a shallow person. The one who took things at face value. Then there was the nullification barrier around his house, and then there was the concentration of runes and charms in his room. She was an infiltrator, so sensing them was a piece of cake. Raynare modified the runes around the house to allow her use of mana, but the runes in his room were literally overpowered. Low levels overlapped each other in a rather organized mess, and if she could even disable one, the others will alarm the creator. But it seemed as though she couldn't even get past the normal-looking door. And it seemed she didn't have to trigger an alarm after all. He probably already knew about her right from the bat. The real question is, how? How about this instead? You tell me how you knew about me, and I'll tell you the truth. True, she wouldn't see the insides of his coveted room, but at least it was another piece of the puzzle called Issei Hyoudou. Deal. Flashback end. And so that was how she explained her situation, and how he explained his. She threw in some half-lies, but so did he. It was a game of cat and mouse, where the roles are continuously reversed. Issei interested Raynare. And Raynare interested Issei. Both had secrets, hidden behind masks of acts and half-truths. And they were both fine by that. So Issei returned to his work. Plans to upgrade his sonic, some more spells, and his current project on light-based powers, and how to kidnap an exiled nun. And it all goes down a day from now. Irina, however, was not happy. She had reported to the church after her rather unfavorable meeting with Issei. Issei changed, that was for sure. He wasn't what she expected. Hell, she expected him to not even remember her. Or mistake her for a boy. She was tomboyish back then. Still a little bit now, but along with her womanly curves grew her maturity as well. She didn't understand what the brunette meant when he said she abandoned him. She never abandoned him. She promised that she would be back. Back to him. Has he forgotten? So here she was now. Alone in her hotel room. Reading the message the church have sent her. She made a mistake. Asia Argento wasn't meant to be with the fallen. She was supposed to be given in the care of the devils. The church's council weren't heartless. They knew that when Asia healed that devil, it was more out of pity and kindness than the holy maiden choosing sides. But most of the idiots in low areas decides that she was a heretic. A witch. So the church sent the nun to Kuo, to the devils, to pacify the rallying people. They knew that the devils will probably turn the nun, but it was better than being assaulted within the territory of the church. Their reputation will go down, they'll lose smart people who aren't judgmental. At least this way, they will only lose a kind and useful nun, but will increase the relationships between the two factions. Problem was, Irina lost her. The fallen has the nun and probably has their crow feet on her now. Her only consolation was that Rias nor the Citriere doesn't know yet. But she can't do it alone. She thought of her contacts, but there was only one that wasn't connected to the devils. And it all comes back to Hyoudou. Everything does. She sighed and slumped her shoulders as she sat on the bed. She decided to talk to the devils tomorrow. She knew how to take hints. Issei changed. And his response would probably be a no. And she didn't know that she was horribly wrong and that Issei has already made moves to ensure Asia's safety. And it all will end to violence, a couple of bruises, and dead crows. Issei's day finally seemed so normal. Like normal in human standards. You know. The day where there were no weird shit happening around you. He jinxed it, didn't he? Darn it. He shoved his hands in his pockets, one fiddling with his screwdriver. The brunette was inside the old school building, being stared at by two peerages, a fallen angel, and a member of the church. What's the occasion? He asked good-naturedly, grinning nervously. It seems that our ally from the church has made a mistake, Rias spoke, a person to be delivered was lost. Suspected to be kidnapped by fallen angels. He narrowed his eyes. The facts were suggesting it was Asia, the one he's been observing. She was apparently exiled from the church. Was called the Holy Maiden until she healed a devil. Called a witch afterwards. The newspapers were pretty informative, actually. But he needed to contact his connections, fast. He didn't like to be left in the dark. Then why is Ray-chan here? She approached us. Her leader sent her to aid us in the rescue mission. The redhead answered. So basically, the three factions uniting once again in a rescue mission. Wonderful. Now then, don't let me stop you. To continue. I'll just check on you tomorrow, I guess. He started to leave, his feet carrying him towards the door. Well, he did have a plan regarding the nun, it would seem as though that everyone else will do it for him. Wait. Sona stopped him, grabbing his arm. It sent some jolts up his body. Physical contact was usually a no-go, especially when he was caught off guard. He froze completely. "Won't you help us? I'm human, dear. But you aren't normal. That is not a way to a man's heart." Saji bristled noticeably. "As far as I'm concerned, you peeps already handled this. There could be surprises. You already outnumber them and you also outclass them. And how would you know that, Issei-kun?" she said sweetly. Far too sweetly. It wasn't like her. And he wasn't the only one shocked. "Techmate, Issei-kun. You know something. Maybe. Maybe not. You know there's no denying it anymore. He sighed. Sometimes, Sona was too smart for her own good. But it wasn't over yet. He turned to face her, lowering his face to her level since she was slightly shorter. Their faces were a couple of inches apart, noses almost touching. He held her cheek, holding her close. Her face flushed immediately, her eyes widening beyond her glasses. Her breath hitched as she momentarily stopped breathing. She didn't understand how she was acting. She thought that maybe Issei would help them if she managed to outsmart him. But it seemed that even if he was cornered, he would turn the tables on you. "Do you really want to know?" She sucked in a breath. "Yes." She stuttered out as his hazel eyes staring deep into her violet ones. He dipped in closer, their lips millimeters apart. Then he leaned his head to the side and said, "Fine then." He stood up straight, spun flamboyantly, his spin hiding the blush across his face. Why did he do that? That was literally out of his comfort zone. He looked at the faces of the others in the room. Akeno was giggling, Rias was grinning, Kaneko was impassive as ever, and Kiba was smiling politely. Tsubaki was smirking imperceptibly, Momo and Ria were looking at Saji in concern, and said Pawn was fuming like a steam train. Raynare was openly glaring at Issei and Sona, jealousy clear in her eyes. And so was Irina. He snapped his fingers in front of the still flustered and stunned heiress, waking her from her embarrassed stupor. "I believe most of you are in the dark. I don't care." Some of them blistered in anger. "From what I've heard, the ritual will start tomorrow evening." Raynare's eyes widened slightly. "What ritual?" Rias asked sharply. "Sacred gear extraction and transplant." Raynare cut in. "And what would happen to the host?" "Sacred gears are embedded in the soul. So technically, they are going to rip her soul out. So she's going to die." The nonchalant tone, the lazy posture, and the seemingly cold logic of it set off some people. "And you were going to ignore this? You heartless bastard." Saji growled at. Issei glared at him. "I had a plan." "Then why refuse helping us?" "Why should I? There's a lot of you. Most of them are cannon fodder at best. The only problems are the 3 fallen angels, and even then you'll fight 2 at most. The other will be busy with the ritual, the 2 will probably take pot shots at you. The next threat would be Selzen. Insane but good. A dangerous combination. Then what was your plan, oh all-knowing one?" "Kidnap Asia." 2 words. 2 simple words that caused a rather awkward silence. "What?" They all looked at him like he was insane. And he was. Partly. Mostly. Okay. Definitely. Sona, Issei and Rias were the only people left in the clubhouse. There was an awkward silence permeating the air and no one bothered to fix it. Issei seemed to be unbothered while sipping tea. Sona was cycling from blushing to trying to force it down. And Rias was alternating her looks at the two. Rias had never in her wildest dreams saw Sona act like she did earlier. The blushing schoolgirl seemed to fit her easily. As if sensing her thoughts, Sona glared at her as if she was the cause of her problems. So maybe she was partially responsible. But she was desperate for a chance of getting out of the marriage that she took the nearest sacred gear. But he wasn't what she expected him to be. He was far more than that. "Speaking of her marriage." "Issei. About what you said." "Oh yes. Your problem. What is it?" He leaned over the table. "I'm forced to marry Riser Phoenix. And lem guess. He's an asshole with blonde hair and a harem. And he's immortal too." "How?" "Phoenix." "Oh." He read the Ars Gotia after all, so he knew about the Phoenix. "I need to beat him." "You can't." Of all the things she expected, it wasn't the blunt answer. "What?" "You heard me. You can't. He probably has more experience, has more troops, and has more power. Add that stupid immortality, then any loss was probably intentional." "Okay. What?" She gave barely any info about the detestable blonde, but Issei hit all marks. She did her research. She had a decade to prepare. But she knew it wasn't enough. "Then how?" "You trick him. Or rather, I will. But that's neither here nor there. Asia Argento will appear tomorrow and I'll have her here by then. See you all later." "Oh, and Sona, I'm sorry about Irulai." "No. It's alright. You can make it up to me somehow." "Fine. Bye so Tan. Ria Tan." End of the part 1. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.